Okay. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our program tonight. And welcome to our second MaryTalk of our 7th season. My name is Philip Duggins. I am with the Alumni Engagement Office here at Mary Washington, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's event. We are excited to host a sizable audience for tonight's presentation, which includes well over 100 alumni, students, parents, and friends from across the country and beyond. As with past lectures, there will be a time after the presentation for our guests to answer any questions you might have. Feel free to click a question or feel free to ask a question by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and submitting it there, or you can vote for other submitted questions to help them rise to the top of the list. At this time, I'd like to introduce Amanda Higino, class of 2024, who will introduce our speaker for this evening. Amanda, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce our athletic director, Patrick Catullo. Patrick's dedication to UMW's mission and values has led him to be an exceptional leader and collaborator committed to the educational experience of student athletes. His familiarity, love, and commitment to the university stems from his time here as a student himself, receiving his bachelor's degree in psychology in 1995 when the university was formerly known as Mary Washington College. As one of our most successful coaches here at UMW, prior to being the director of athletics, Patrick was hired as head of the women's tennis program from 2004 to 2018, leading the team to 14 conference titles and 14 NCAA tournament appearances. I personally had the honor of playing for Patrick when he then made the courageous decision to step in and return to the women's team in the 2022 spring season. Patrick gracefully tackled the challenge of being the athletic director and interim head women's tennis coach to continue his legacy for one final year, earning the C2C championship title and NCAA Sweet 16 appearance, all while handling the duties and responsibilities of being the athletic director. His legacy continues to grow as he has been responsible for 22 athletic teams and the addition of our new esports team. Patrick's passion, commitment, and vision for the university allows our program to continue to excel. And with that, I'm happy to introduce the man himself, Patrick Catullo.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. That was a very nice introduction, and I will tell everyone that Amanda's got a mean forehand and serve and volley. Yeah, you don't want to mess with any of that. It's good to be here. Welcome, everyone. It is a little weird not being able to see everyone, but we're certainly gonna do our best. I'm joined tonight by our Associate Athletic Director, Caitlin Moore. Caitlin oversees all of our team sports, and we'll be sharing some information with you as we go through tonight and answer questions that come up. Tonight, we are here to talk about the Coast to Coast Conference, the C2C, and briefly kind of go over the shifting landscape of Division III, or I guess you could say even the shifting landscape of the NCAA, but that's a whole nother session. Division III, if you don't know, if this is your first experience with Division III, it's the largest division of all three. 440 institutions, 195,000 student athletes make up Division III. The philosophy of Division III is student first, but athletics makes up a big part of their experience. They're choosing to make athletics a big part of their experience. There's no athletic scholarships. They're doing it for the pure love of the game. But it also allows the students to really take advantage of everything the institution has to offer. Before we go any further into it, Caitlin, why don't you go ahead and share just a little bit about our athletic department and our makeup of our student athletes.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick, and good evening, everybody. It's great to have you on. So just some fast facts for everybody specific to Mary Washington, as Patrick said. So first and foremost, and many of you are familiar with this firsthand, our coaches are phenomenal recruiters. Of the incoming first-year class here at Mary Washington for this past fall, just over 17% of students identified as student athletes, clocking in at 133 first-time first-year student athletes for the Department of Athletics. And as of today, because we did pull the numbers this morning, we have 519 duplicated student athletes and then 499 non-duplicated student athletes. So what does that really mean? We have about 20 dual sport athletes within our department and just right around 519 overall students. Now, many of those dual sport athletes are between our cross country and track and field programs, But Caitlin Perch is a great example of somebody who is a dual sport athlete between volleyball, just finishing in the Sweet 16 round, and getting ready for her softball season here in just a couple of months. Couple other statistics for you all. Out of our entire department of that 499, 149 are out-of-state students, which is roughly 30% of our cohort within athletics. And then of the population at large, athletics makes up about 44% of the out-of-state population at UMW. And you might be wondering, what are the largest number of out-of-state students? Where are they coming from in terms of our sport programs? Those would be men's rugby, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, and then baseball. And really just to dovetail off of what Patrick was saying earlier, our students are students first. So last year in the 2021-22 academic year, the average GPA in athletics was a 3.18, which typically trends higher than the average GPA here at Mary Washington. And our students are also studying abroad and getting involved in internships. So anecdotally, we have roughly 10 student athletes per year that do study abroad, and many are taking advantage in their non-traditional seasons. And we also have a couple of winter study abroad programs that our students take part in. So as a former women's lacrosse coach, I had several players that would go on a Nepal trip over winter break, and that was such an awesome experience for them and really added to their overall experience. And then in terms of internships, so many of our coaches also teach within the sports management minor, and that cohort also requires a sports management internship. So that is made up of student athletes and non-student athletes alike. But we do have roughly 60 students within that sports management minor who are completing internships on an annual basis.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Caitlin. We also are absolutely crushing it. We're off to a great start on the athletic front. Our women's volleyball team just finished, got knocked out of the round of 16, the Sweet 16, but they had a great showing at the NCAA tournament. Our men's soccer team is still alive. They leave for Amherst, Massachusetts tomorrow for a round of 16 matchup. And our men's basketball team currently is holding their own against the preseason #1 ranked basketball program in the country right now. And they're in the Anderson. We just checked in on them, and they were holding up. I don't know where they are now, but
not just holding their own. I just checked the score. 31. Mary Wash is up to 19 for Randolph-Macon. So
perfect.
So a good start.
So we're off to a great start. So as we shift our conversation tonight to the conference, it's really kind of talking about where we were with the Capital Athletic Conference to where we are now in the C2C or the Coast to Coast Conference. There's really two main themes that makes up this transition or this path that we've been on. One is in Division III, 80% of Division III schools are private, and 20% of those schools are public. And then two, over the last couple of years, there's been a demographic shift going on where there is a reduction in high school students going on to college. Just the national trends is there's just less students, and it's going to continue to drop between now and 2026. It's going to be a pretty significant drop. And so institutions all across the country are preparing for this and becoming very strategic in their operations and looking at how they're managing their institution and what they're offering in order to make sure that they are well positioned. It's become increasingly competitive to attract students, especially when you have more institutions than you have students going to them. You got to get really creative in that. And so for us in Division III, athletic departments are enrollment drivers. The makeups can vary between, Caitlin mentioned Mary Washington is 17%, but it can range all the way up to 40% of the undergraduate population. And so it becomes ultra competitive in that. And those efforts for recruitment and retention efforts are centered around academic success, competitive success and access to postseason to the NCAA tournament. And so when you're looking at that and we're looking to be really competitive and attract students, institutions really start to align themselves and look to align themselves with like institutions, with similar institutions. So the Capital Athletic Conference had a mix of private and public institutions, and ultimately through the course of the years, the private institutions left the Capital Athletic Conference and ultimately was left with the three publics: Salisbury University, Christopher Newport, and Mary Washington. So from there, an opportunity, we created the Coast to Coast Conference, which is made up of public institutions. So the three of us, along with UC Santa Cruz, and then a sample of private institutions around the country that were unaffiliated. The focus of this conference was really the driving force was to provide postseason tournament play for all our sports. And ultimately access to the NCAA tournament, as well as conference awards and honors for the student athletes. And again, it's all about the student athlete experience, which equates into recruitment and retention efforts, attracting students to that institution. And so I'm going to share my screen so you can kind of see what the Coast to Coast looks like. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. What do we think? Caitlin, can you see it?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, perfect. So you can kind of see the current makeup of the Coast to Coast Conference. We have Santa Cruz all the way out in California, to Finlandia in Michigan, Mount Mary in Wisconsin, and then Pratt up in New York. And then Salisbury, Christopher Newport, and Mary Washington in the Mid-Atlantic region, followed by Warren Wilson in North Carolina. Warren Wilson is a great example. Warren Wilson is a new member that was unaffiliated with another conference, and so they will be a full member starting next year. And we continue, part of our strategy with the C2C is to continue to look for core members as well as affiliate members. So we do have a couple of affiliate members in men's soccer. And then we also created a spinoff called the Coastal Lacrosse League for our men's lacrosse teams. And so that's a combination of coast to coast schools along with a couple schools in the New Jersey Conference. Our swimming programs, along with Salisbury swimming program, join the Met, which is a affiliate conference up out of really based out of New Jersey. All of those affiliates, all of those conferences are really centered around postseason tournament with an automatic qualification to the national tournament. Let's go to some questions. Caitlin, I don't know where the questions are. Can you see any questions?
Yeah, sure. So somebody posted in the chat, and I think this is a very valid question and something that is on top of everybody's mind. So what is the short or long-term potential of joining a conference that is more regional in nature?
Yes, that's certainly a great question. We would love to join a conference that is more regional in nature. As I mentioned earlier, the 80-20, the 80% private institutions, they're looking for membership, core members that are similar to themselves. Most of those institutions are between 1,000, 1,500, 2,100 students. Public institutions like Salisbury, Christopher Newport, and Mary Washington, although we're not as big as Salisbury, we are a public part of the Commonwealth and not a private institution, and so we don't necessarily align with them. Although we do align with them more than they think, but because we're a public institution, we don't necessarily align, and so we're surrounded in the region with a lot of private institutions. The big conference, the Old Dominion Athletic Conference, the ODAC, is made up of private institutions. That's just to the south and west of us. To the north, the Atlantic East Conference, the Landmark Conference, all of these conferences are made up of private institutions. So we're really surrounded by private conferences. So, but we keep searching. The plan forward for the C2C is to continue to add core members, to bolster our tournaments and bolster our sports sponsorships for all sports, and also being very creative at looking at adding affiliate memberships where appropriate.
And Patrick, I know somebody had submitted earlier, and this might be a great time for us to address it. So here at Mary Washington, we have 19 varsity sports, and we also have some team sports, which are under the umbrella of athletics. So these are our men's and women's rugby programs, as well as esports. So our men's rugby program competes in a non-NCAA level, but in a D1A in the Rugby East. And our women's rugby program competes at D2 level in the Capital Conference. And then esports is going to be a member of the NACE League, which is the National Association of Collegiate Esports. And that will really kick off next fall in terms of what their competitive schedule looks like. And it looks like we have another question. Will UMW be offering live streaming at away events?
As long as the home team that we're traveling to offers live stream, the answer will be yes. Yeah, we have bolstered our live streaming efforts here at home by adding more and more cameras to our venues, and the hope that we are fully comprehensive. We have a full slate of live stream offerings next year.
This might be my favorite question yet. So whoever this anonymous attendee is, you're crushing it. So given today's demographics and current events, what resources and support do you think is needed the most for student athletes at Mary Washington?
You want me? I can certainly take that one, Caitlin. Yes. I think that mental health support right now continues to be something that we continue to look at and providing resources for it. We've had some great programming internally this year to provide avenues and access for our student athletes. I think the ability to provide that kind of support for our student athletes is certainly important, and that's an area that we continue to look to put some resources into.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, right, everybody is upgrading their facilities, and here at Mary Washington, we want to make a commitment to that as well, and we certainly have, and will continue to do so. But, you know, I think ultimately at any facility that you go to, there's sort of a new level of what is considered a basic need now versus 10 years ago versus 20 years ago. All of that looks different. And I think part of it is just really staying up to date on the trends in terms of what our students are sort of experiencing in high school, and understanding that becomes, you know, the basic level of care once you get to the collegiate level. Not a conference question, but what is the plan to add lights to the soccer fields? Thank you for your efforts at UMW. Yeah.
I can tell you that I can share with you that we are looking at the Battleground Athletic Complex, and not only we are looking at making some enhancements to that, and so stay tuned. I'm dancing around that question on purpose, but we are looking at making some enhancements out at the Battleground.
And then another question, can you say more about the concern about linking to other publics given the small number? Why not compete academically and athletically with colleges like Gettysburg and the others in their conference?
Yeah, that's it makes.
I don't know if they want us.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it? Yeah. The short answer is Mary Washington, whether it's right or wrong, Mary Washington is seen by our peer institutions, our private peer institutions, as an institution that receives a lot of state support. And it really depends on how you slice that out. We receive a lot of academic, not a lot. We receive academic support from the Commonwealth, but not for auxiliaries. And so athletics falls under auxiliary services, and their facilities are auxiliary. They're not academic in nature, but it doesn't get viewed that way. And so when we're competing for students, Gettysburg, I don't know how many students they have. Let's say they have 1,200 students versus 3,500 at Mary Washington, or just over that. If you invite a school like Mary Washington into that conference, who is successful academically and athletically, and now we are putting our marketing dollars and our athletic success, taunting our success at the national level, they feel it's an unfair advantage for them to be able to attract students. And so that's kind of one of the reasons why the CAC sort of fell apart. It was the private schools in that conference were having trouble really keeping up with the Salisbury, Christopher Newports, and Mary Washington. We would love to join. We would love to join the Centennial. I think Gettysburg's in the Centennial. We would love to join the Centennial Conference.
So how can student athletes find out about all of those supports? So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this question is really referencing sort of mental health supports as well as just other basic resources on campus. So we send out resources to coaches to pass along to their student athletes. And then each one of our sport programs has 2 representatives on the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And through that group, we have some additional resources that they pass along. For example, a subgroup of that group is called Eagles Let's Talk. And so they meet on a monthly basis. They actually met last night about student athlete concerns, really in an informal setting, so that it can be addressed sort of in a peer-to-peer. And we also have one of our athletic trainers that attends that, just for a bit of oversight. So in terms of those support services, they certainly have, their coaches, but as well as our athletic training staff, as well as our administrative staff. And if they get lost, they can certainly come down to my office and I'd be happy to direct them. Oh, here's a good question, Patrick. Are you ready? So do you foresee any current conference members moving out of the conference or changing their NCAA affiliation in the near future? And is there a possibility that any of the state colleges or universities that currently participate as division programs might decide to move towards D3 and thereby become potential participants in the C2C?
I think currently participate at division programs. I'm assuming we'll say that's a Division I programs or Division II programs might decide to move towards Division III. Short answer to that one is yes, I hope so. No, I think that no, I am not aware of any C2C members switching divisions. I think that, as I mentioned when at the top, we're the demographic shift is going to continue to put pressure on enrollment numbers for all of our conference members, and so anything could happen. But no, there's as of now, we're all holding steady and strong and looking to add members and affiliate programs for our sports.
And truthfully, if anybody's watched the unfolding of Hartford going from Division I to Division III, I think there are a lot of colleges and universities watching that unfold. If you're not familiar with that situation, a quick Google search will tell you everything that's going on at Hartford. But it's just not as easy as just switching divisions and making a smooth transition. There are some distinct challenges that come with all of that. But
to our anonymous attendee, it makes a lot of sense for several Division I programs in the Commonwealth to join the C2C.
What is the benefit of the additional affiliate conferences that you mentioned for men's lacrosse and swimming?
Really, it's the student athlete experience, right? The recruitment and retention efforts. What's the focus of this conference? We have a national conference. The focus is providing awards for our kids so they can celebrate their success, academic and athletic. 2, it's providing an end of season tournament, and 3, that end of season tournament, if you win that tournament, provides access to the NCAA. Men's lacrosse did not have the required number of members in order to have a postseason tournament, and so by joining forces and creating an affiliate conference with members of the NJAC or the New Jersey schools, we are able to create a postseason tournament with an automatic qualifier to the NCAA.
All right. Oh, and this might be from some of our spring sport parents, maybe. Is it possible to have a spring homecoming to support the spring teams?
The answer is yes, we are looking at it, but it's not going to be a spring homecoming. I think our traditional fall homecoming is when we invite parents, alumni, and classmates, our students, right, to come out. I think in the spring we can dub it something else. I don't know if we have any creative names, but we are talking about centering some sort of celebration around our baseball, softball, tennis track, and lacrosse programs. and being able to do something. I don't know if we're going to be able to hit all of those sports, but maybe we can do some sort of rotation. But yes, we are looking at it, but nothing is planned at this point.
All right. What is the retention and graduation rate for the student athletes? And is it about the same with the overall student population? And Patrick, as I was sorting through these questions, I was quickly trying to find it in my email, because I believe the last time we did this was March 22.
Yep.
And at that time, and this is quick look, student athletes overall for that fall 2020 return, fall 21 cohort, which is how we do the retention for our sport teams. Athletics was at 86%, just over 86%, and UMW overall was at 82%. So typically athletics tends to trend a little bit higher than the average population. All right. Is UMW scheduled to host any NCAA tournaments in men's or women's tennis in the next few years?
I hope so. If you haven't been to the Battleground recently, we had a very generous donation where we were able to reconstruct the outdoor courts, and they are beautiful. Named them after the director of athletics and longtime women's tennis coach, Dr. Ed Hegman. And if you haven't seen them, they're one of the best in the Mid-Atlantic region. So we're very lucky and honored to have such a nice facility. The answer is yes. We have to qualify to host. So as the teams continue to find success on the tennis court and qualify for the NCAAs, we will put in bids to host the regional rounds. Yes.
Yeah, much like we did for volleyball as well as men's soccer during this past cycle. I think it's a phenomenal experience, not just for the student athletes on that team, but I think the success and watching the success of their peers really breeds it in other sport programs. And it was just a phenomenal week for both volleyball and men's soccer. And we look forward to hosting in the future for our other sport programs. What will travel look like for the athletes who travel to California for a game or other states further away?
I think it'll look a little bit differently, but it should be exciting. Part of the student athlete experience here within the Department of Athletics at Mary Washington is being able to experience different parts of the country, and even looking for international trips when appropriate, when fundings are available, and when that is possible. But our tournaments, I think it's a good thing that we have end of season tournaments all over the country. I think it provides a really unique experience for some of our sport programs that typically don't travel very much and stay in the Mid-Atlantic region. So the biggest difference with tournaments is that maybe in the past under the CAC or the Capital Athletic Conference, you played home or away on Monday, and then you played home or away on Wednesday, and then you played a championship on Saturday, but you always went to and from. It was always a single game. Now this is either a 3 or a 4 day tournament. And when we travel a little bit further away, we work in a travel day on the front end to make sure that we get acclimated. But it's been a really neat experience. Our softball team got to go to Wisconsin for the first time. Our basketball teams went out to Santa Cruz. We had the California schools here for our volleyball championships, and there's actually some schools that are doing mid-year trips. Mary Washington is not necessarily traveling mid-year yet, but we're still very fortunate where we're able to find regional competition to fill our schedules. But when those schools come east, we are sure to play them.
So how are academic expectations for UMW athletes established by the AD, the department, the coach? Question.
I think it's a combination of everything. Top down, academics is a priority first and foremost in the department. We are very proud of our department GPA. Having it trend higher year after year than the student population is something that we are very proud of and continue to work very hard at. The coaches that we hire as faculty members and head coaches have the autonomy to run their programs as they see fit, and that includes kind of their academic expectations. If anything, decisions or policies that they put in place that went outside of our philosophy in the department, then the coach and I would certainly have a conversation, but that hasn't been the case. Most of our coaches keep very strict academic protocols, and the student athletes have really met that expectation and done a great job.
And just a quick check-in for everybody. Our men's basketball team is up 35-23 on number
Perfect.
one Randolph-Macon,
Right.
with just under 16 minutes to go in the second half. So time's not on our side, but hey, they're doing a phenomenal job. And the next question is from Valentina. Valentina, one of my favorites. I hope you are doing well, and I wish
Former student athlete.
Yes. Right now. Yes, former phenomenal student athlete and leader here at Mary Washington. Do you see an implementation of student athlete support, like student athlete academic support services or leadership development, happening at a departmental level in the next few years? I think that's a great question. I think we continue to grow our relationship specifically with academic services. And really have gotten involved this year specifically with the PACs, which are peer academic counselors, so the PAC program, and as well as I think doing some more intentional work through our student athlete advisory committee and growing our athletics diversity, equity, and inclusion group. So we have now formally partnered with Farmer Fellows on that. And I think that is serving our student athletes in a much better way and certainly more comprehensive. So Valentina, I hope you're doing well. And
Hope you're doing well.
Maroon and orange. So have any C2C teams won at-large bids to the NCAA tournament? Women's soccer must have been close given record and 3 close games against the defending national champ.
Well, one of the things that we continue to talk about with our coaches as they're looking at building their schedules, because we're not necessarily a regional conference anymore, looking at being very strategic with our scheduling. It's not an easy job. There's a lot of factors that go into ranking committees, ranking teams, as well as selections for the NCAA tournament. It is more competitive than it's ever been in most of our sports. The field is just so deep in a lot of our sports. And so I'll answer the question about women's soccer, but I think as coaches are looking at their schedules, it's no longer just kind of drawing a 50-mile radius around Mary Washington and selecting those teams to play. I think we have to look at, as our department has approached our recruitment and retention efforts, more of a business model, as it should. We're here to serve the university. We are part of the university, and we are the leaders really in the recruitment and retention efforts. And so we need to make sure that we are doing our job. And so part of that really is to create competitive opportunities that match the student athletes that we're bringing in, but also allow us to be in a situation where we can be talked about in ranking groups and be selected for national tournaments or postseason play. All of that helps our brand. All of that helps our marketing efforts and our recruitment and retention efforts. As goes to women's soccer, Coach Gersony has done an unbelievable job the last couple of years. Last year, he had the #1 toughest schedule in all of D3. This year, I think he dummied it down a little bit and got them to #4, the 4th toughest schedule or 6th toughest schedule in the country. And you don't always know that going in, right? Because it really depends on how your opponents do. But he did an unbelievable job. I think you're right. We were one of the first teams out of the tournament. We came real close in the finals of that conference tournament. If we had found a way to win, obviously we would have punched our ticket. But even that, we just had too many results against regionally ranked opponents that ended in a tie. They weren't even losses, and that's how competitive it is. We had 3 or 4 ties against regional opponents. If we had been ahead on one of those, I think the team would have been in the tournament. And so we're very close.
I think what's so hard sometimes to view from the outside is those regional ranking committees do not look at score differentials. So it doesn't matter if you lose to #1 by 1, it just records it as a loss. And so those conversation pieces don't get really brought to the table, but it's more about the results at the end of the day. And I talked to Coach Gersony quite for some time about how ties are now ranked in the regional ranking system. And I'll be very curious to see if the national committee makes any adjustments to how they award points for ties. So we will be right back after it in just a couple more months. Oh, I love this question, Stephen. A longtime curiosity question. When UMW hosts an NCAA round of tournament play, does the school capture any of the $10 admission fee?
Caitlin just served as our tournament director for both volleyball and men's soccer, did it simultaneously, did an unbelievable job. So I'm gonna let her answer the question, because I'm sure she'd love to share this.
I have a lot of opinions on this, although they're more personal than anything else. But it just goes to offset the cost. So really the bid process for NCAAs, we fill out bids, and then the NCAA selects the sites, and we find out pretty much like 4 to 6 hours before the teams find out. And really from there, we have to put in a projected amount of ticket sales. But those ticket sales, unfortunately, no, UMW does not keep them. They just go to offset the cost of hosting the tournament, because there are some of those hidden costs that, you know, maybe somebody from the outside wouldn't quite consider, something such as a site rep hotel. You have to feed your officials for a few days. You have to house them, hospitality items for visiting teams. So there's a variety of things that go into that, even paying ball runners. So unfortunately, no, Stephen, it just goes to offset the costs. How far in advance are host sites for the conference tournaments predetermined?
Just about every 2 years. We have 22-23, that's this year. And then we have 23-24 predetermined. I'm not even going to try and run it off in my head, but it is decided for next year. We are slated to host, gosh, I don't want to say what they are. I don't want to get it wrong, but we are slated to host some next year. And then we will start selecting for the next 2 years this year.
And for the 22-23 year, so we hosted conference championships for volleyball, and then we will also host C2C champs for women's basketball, as well as our track and field programs. So we are focused on our next set of tournaments. How do you define a successful UMW athletic season?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that's multifaceted, right? It's first is, did we do a good job with our student athlete experience, what we define as a student athlete experience? Did we provide competitive opportunities? Did we provide community service for our teams? Did they find success both on the field or on the court or on the pool, as well as off academically? Were they successful? And then it's some of the intangibles, right? It's we have it's a relationship-based leadership style here in the department. The door's always open, and so really getting to know kind of the student athletes and meeting them and seeing them in their space, whether it's in a classroom in the athletic department or across campus in the dining hall, after a game. Really kind of chatting and checking in with them. And then, of course, we have student athlete evaluations that are done every year. We have check-ins with our coaches once every couple weeks. And really, when we're checking all of those boxes, that really defines a successful season. It doesn't always have to end in with a conference title and a trip to the NCAA in order to have a successful season. But certainly when those things are happening, all of the other pieces are usually happening as well. The team is achieving at a very high level.
And Patrick, a great time to also provide a quick update from the Anderson Center. Men's basketball is up 44-28 over Randolph-Macon right now.
Perfect. That's great.
Here we go.
Perfect.
And women's basketball also off to a phenomenal start, 3-0 already on the season.
That's right.
And men's and women's swimming headed to Franklin and Marshall on Friday.
That's right. Is that it for our questions?
That looks like all the questions. We'll give just one more second. If anybody has any last minute questions to put in the Q&A, feel free to do that now. And if not, we will start to wrap up.
I will say that it was once a saying at Mary Washington. I don't know when it started, but we've revived it and brought it back. If you see any student or student athlete at Mary Washington, or coach or staff member, say get dirty to them, they say go wash. And so we are screaming that across campus and in athletic events and team huddles. Get dirty, go wash. We started something called the Blue Crew this year, which is a fan group of students. They cheer at our home games, get the crowd riled up in a positive way. But they have signs of get dirty, go wash, and the Eagles, and it's been really great. It's been a lot of fun at our home contest.
Okay, so there haven't been any more questions that have been entered. So we will get to the point of starting to wrap up. So
We got one more, Philip. One more.
Yep. Oh, came in.
Why did you introduce Columbia blue as an accent color?
I wish we could take credit for that. We couldn't. We hired a branding or marketing company called Mind Power a couple of years ago, pre-COVID. I believe that's right. Is that right, Philip and Kaylin? And they an offshoot of that branding was developing some different and updated colors and fonts for Mary Washington.
What's old is new again. Roy, is that you there?
Is that Roy? Get dirty, go watch, Roy. Perfect.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks again. I wanted to thank Caitlin and Patrick and Amanda for joining us this evening. I'd also like to thank Mark Simpkins from Events AV, who helped facilitate the virtual logistics of tonight's program. And thanks again to our viewers at home for joining us and being a part of the conversation. Remember that this presentation will be available for viewing on the UMW YouTube channel by this time next week. There you can watch this program and browse the full catalog of MaryTalk. Our 7th season of MaryTalk continues on March the 15th. And that is a special day because it's actually the day after Pi Day, which is normally the 14th of March, 3.14. And our next lecture will be Dr. Julius Assange, who is the department chair for our mathematics department. So he's going to tie in his talk into Pi Day a little bit. So make sure that you're prepared for that. But look for more information about that in the next few months. But once again, the date on that is March 15th. We look forward to seeing you then, if not earlier. Thank you and have a good night.
Bye, everyone.